Guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Neha and I make videos related to books, and welcome to a wrap-up video. So yeah, if you've seen the title already, these are the bookish hits and misses over the last 2 months of 2024 for me, so January and February. I used to do reading wrap-ups, I think in 2023 a little bit, but 2022 every month I was very religious about, and I kind of miss doing that. So that's why I thought it'd be good to bring back that format with a little bit of a twist, because otherwise if I just talk about all the books I've read in the last 2 months, it would be a very long video. I'm almost talking about all the books that I've read, but I will keep it concise and stick to book recommendations. So yeah, basically I'm going to be talking about what books hit the mark for me and what kind of missed the mark for me in the last 2 months, and it would be a consolidated wrap up, but hopefully from the next month going forward I will just talk about individual months. Another thing is I will be picking out my best book for each of the months that I will be talking about, so that towards the end of the year, hopefully the goal is to have 12 books for each month, each of the months, and then decide which is the ultimate book that I've read in 2024. So yeah, that's enough of a disclaimer. Let's quickly get started. So yeah, in the first 2 months of 2024 I ended up reading 10 books. Now this is as per my goal for the year. My goal for the year is to read 60 books, so 5 in each month. I am on track. I think I read a little more in February because of the nature of books that I read, but yeah, overall I feel like the hit part of that is that I am moving towards my bookish goal for the year, so that's great. So yeah, let's talk about the misses for the last couple of months, the books which I read which didn't really live up to the hype for me. The first one was also the first book that I read for the year. Actually, I was reading it in December and it kind of spilled over to Jan. It is Roman Stories by Jhumpa Lahiri. I don't have the physical copy with me right now, but this is a collection of short stories. Jhumpa Lahiri, if you don't know, was an Indian immigrant author who used to write primarily about Indian immigrant experiences in the US. Then she moved to Italy, I think a couple of years ago. She learned Italian and now she writes almost exclusively in Italian, and this is her book of short stories which was originally written in Italian and then translated by her into English. These are set in Rome, in like a couple of, in a big city of Rome, so yeah, you can assume which big city that is. And it is basically, most of the stories are about the immigrants' experience in Rome in such times when Europe is kind of going through a reckoning of its own, where they are not being as friendly to immigrants as they once were, or the surge of immigrants into the continent has been exponential, and that is why the people who are already living there are not as friendly as as they could be to these people. So these stories all follow the same trend. The reason this is in the misses category for me is because I felt like after 1 story, 2 story, 3 stories, it felt very repetitive. The themes was the same, like immigrants facing a tough time in the big cities, facing racism, facing assault, facing both physical and by words. So it was the same trend. It didn't feel like the nuanced take that I know Jhumpa Lahiri is so capable of, and because I think it also was because in her previous works I could relate to the people that she is talking about, because these are Indians who are living abroad, even though I've really never lived abroad as such, but I felt like I could relate to them feeling out of place and them finding a place of their own and then struggling and to find such a place, etc. I felt like I could relate. This one I really could not relate for some reason, and the language also felt really chonky. It was not the language that I love of Lahiri. And whenever I pick up a book of whenever I pick up a backlist book of Lahiri, I just fall into her words and I feel like they're very comforting. This didn't evoke the same feelings in me, so unfortunately that's why this is a miss for me, and I would have to say that this is my least favorite Jhumpa Lahiri book of all the ones that I've read. I think I ended up giving this 2.5 stars. I don't even remember, but yeah, unfortunately a miss for me. So yeah, moving on. Next book that was a miss for me is Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. I didn't even finish this book. I think I was around 100 pages left, but then I gave it up, and then I'm not counting this as a DNF because I got so much through this book that I feel like it has to be a win for me, right? Because I know what is going to happen at the end, which is basically nothing. So I felt like this is a red book for me. I don't know why. But anyway, the plot of the story, this is a family saga about about a family called Hildebrands, and it is set in 1971. The father is a pastor in a church, and he has these ideals of how people should behave, etc., etc., and his family kind of suffers because of it. He also kind of suffers with it. He's almost about to get into an affair with somebody at the church. His wife is holding a secret. His teenage daughter is holding a secret. His son drops out of college to fight the Vietnam War, which his father is very against. So it's basically a moment of reckoning for this family. So it's basically that they are at a crossroads. Franzen I picked up because, I heard a lot of talk about how he's the next big American author, and I felt like I should give him a chance. And I really like family sagas when they're done right. Unfortunately, this book, I could not vibe with it. I can't explain it. I felt like the characters were just too one-dimensional for me, and I just didn't feel like I was getting a lot out of it. So every chapter of this book is told from the perspective of a different family member, and you're kind of jumping here all over the place. It covers a short period of time in their lives, but because you're following one person from day 1 to day 5, then you come back to the next chapter, which again starts from day 1 to day 5. So it's a little disorienting. So it didn't also have the best reading experience, but mainly I just got bored. There was really nothing major happening in this book. It felt like the plot was just chugging along for the sake of chugging along. I later read that this is book 1 of a trilogy which is going to come out at some point, and I was like, I can't commit to this book anymore. I felt like I had already sacrificed a big chunk of my time to this book. I think I read this for at least 10 days, if not more. In that space of time, I could have read at least 2 other good books. So after that point, I think I just pulled out the bookmark also when where I had left it. After that point, I was just like, I'm done. I can't, and I don't want to count it as a DNF because I have invested so much into this book, and I read what happens on Wikipedia anyway, so I feel like I know what's happening. So yeah, unfortunately a miss for me. Then the last miss for the last 2 months has been Winter in Sokcho by Elisa Dusapin. I picked this up because, again, just look at the cover. It's like a postcard almost, and it's so beautiful. I picked this up in Bangalore in Blossoms. Hopefully there's a video on that coming soon. But anyway, I picked this up because, again, a lot of people on the internet were talking about it, and I wanted to give it a chance. So this is set in Sokcho, which is a tourist town in South Korea, very close to the border between North and South Korea. And in the winter, it's kind of a desolate place. This one French comic author, moves into a hotel in which a French-Korean girl works at, and they kind of strike up a bond, and the story is just about them. The reason this is a miss for me is that, again, I felt like that there was no purpose to the story. Like, I could get the conflict that the girl had with different people in her life, and also kind of with herself and her body image. I got that. I was with her for that. But then the bond that she has with this guy and how the ending is, I just felt like it was a little pointless. It was just like story. It didn't feel like a well-rounded story. I wouldn't say it was an ambiguous ending, but it just felt like the author did not close a lot of the loops that she had created during the course of the story, and just kind of left them vague. And I generally tend to not like those books unless they're done really, really well. Unfortunately, I felt like this one didn't do it as well. Later on, I realized that a lot of people have read this book on the internet. Again, picked it up because of the pretty cover, just like me. And a lot of people also felt like how I did, like that there was no point to this book. It is a short one. So the benefit is that you can finish it in one sitting. I finished this on a plane on the way back to Mumbai, and I guess that's a win. But unfortunately, the rest of it, the story and just like the characters in itself, I didn't vibe with as much. So yeah, that's why this was a letdown for me and a miss for me. So yeah, let's quickly talk about the hits, because I feel like the video was already very long. I tried to like tone down my descriptions, but unfortunately it didn't work. But anyway, the very first one that I absolutely loved, and my favorite book for January for sure, has to be A Psalm for the Wild Build by Becky Chambers. This is book 1 in the Monk and Robo series, and I think I mentioned this in my book haul video as well, which I'll link up above, do check it out. But this book is basically set in a future, kind of a dystopian / utopian future, where robots have become sentient, and they decide that they are done with this life. They don't want to help human beings anymore, and they just walk away, and human beings let them walk away. So we kind of go back to operating without machines and machinery. And in this scenario, there is someone who is a tea monk. Yes, Dex is their name, and they decide to become a tea monk, and they are always struggling with this question of what is the purpose of life, like what is the purpose of their life in particular. And in the course of becoming the best tea monk, they decide to go on a quest to find out the purpose of life. Then they run into a robot which the other robots have sent to find out whether human beings have discovered the purpose in their life. So they kind of team up, and they set off on like this adventure together. This is one of the most sweetest sci-fi books that I've ever read. I don't think you can call this sci-fi, but I just felt like it was so sweet. The tea monk and their experience serving tea to the human populace in different villages, about how like their tea kind of solves the problems of the general population. And I just really loved that atmosphere that they have created. It felt so cozy and so sweet and so warm. I loved reading it. Again, a very short one. You can finish it in 1 or 2 sittings max. I just fell in love with the tea monk as well as the robot. I don't want to say too much about the plot in this wrap up, because I went into it completely blind, and I feel like that was the best way to discover this book. So I would recommend that to anybody who's watching this video. Just go into this book. I promise you'll have a great time. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to reading the rest of the series. So yes. Then a February book that I really enjoyed, another sci-fi book. Like, who am I? This is The Martian by Andy Weir. I picked this up again recently. It was in my book haul as well. And I picked this up because I really like Project Hail Mary, and this of course is his most famous work. I don't think this book needs an introduction, right? Mark Watney has been left for dead on Mars, but he's not dead, and he has to figure out a way to live. He has to figure out a way to grow food in an atmosphere which is inhabitable to food. He has to make sure that his oxygenator, his water generator, water reclaimer, it does not break down, the habitat does not breach. He just has to make sure he is alive long enough for the next mission going to Mars comes to rescue him from the surface of Mars. And he also has to make sure that the people on Earth know that he is alive, so that they actually help him come back to Earth. So yeah, I mean, the science part of it, yes, went a little above my head. I'm not a science student, so it was a little complicated to read as much as watch the movie. The movie makes it so much more easier to follow along, but I loved the character of Watney. He in this book is so funny. He is so nonchalant, like he is alone on Mars, right? He's the only person on that entire planet, so he has to find a way to amuse himself, and he does, and he amuses the reader as well. So I just loved the portrayal of the character, his tenacity, his humor, his resourcefulness. Like, if I was left for dead on Mars, there is absolutely no way I am surviving, right? I mean, yeah, I have no skills for survival as such, but I really enjoyed my time with this book. I would say I liked this a little lesser than Hail Mary, only because of Rocky on Project Hail Mary. If you've read that book, you know what I mean. I just love that character so much. But on this one, I think the entire setting was really beautifully executed, like the switching between Earth and Mars, and the portrayal of how he is doing on Mars, whereas how his death and his subsequent regeneration, the reaction it provokes on Earth. I just love that counterplay. So yeah, if you haven't read it already, I'm sure many people have read it already, but if you haven't, do check it out. And then the last and my best book for February 2024 has to be Time Shelter by Georgy Gospodinov. This won the Man Booker International Prize in 2023, and I have been meaning to read this for quite some time. This is translated from the Bulgarian, right? This is translated from Bulgarian by Angela Rodel, and the basic premise of the story is that two people set out to create a time shelter, basically a building with different floors for different decades, which is used to help Alzheimer's and dementia patients kind of return to their youth or to their past, and it has been proven that it is helpful for them if they are returned to their familiar settings at a time and place when they have their full memories, right, as opposed to the current time where they're very lost and they don't know what is going on. This idea starts to pick up where regular healthy people also want to use the time shelters because they just don't want to be in the present because they have no hope for the future, or the past has great memories. And it picks up so much steam that the EU decides to pass referendums across each country to decide which decade of the past it wants to go back in. Now, I don't need to spell out why that would be disastrous, because the 20th century was very famous for a lot of wars in these countries. But the book is basically about how this thing just goes to massive epic proportions, and the makers of this time shelter, they're kind of struggling to digest what has happened, like how their idea to treat people has kind of reached this momentous spectacle as such. I love this book because of the premise and because of the language. Even though it's a translation, the lines and the quotes are so beautiful. As you can see, I have tabbed my way through it, and how the lines on grief, on memory, on countries and economies and people and humanity. I absolutely loved it. It is so profound, but it also is so frothy in parts, like you want to read it because of how readable it is, but you're also like, you want to savor the language and the line. So absolutely loved it. Please check it out, and let me know if you like it, if you happen to read it from this video. So yeah, those are all the hits and misses for me in January and February of 2024. I did mention what are the best and what are my best books for each of the months. So for January, it has to be A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers, and February it has to be Time Shelter by Georgi Gospodinov. These are the contenders, and they're very, very strong contenders because I love both these books for different reasons. This was warm and comforting, this was scary but also very profound. So yeah, that's it. If you're still around, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.